A brief history of the cruel Assyrians. An ancient civilization known as the Assyrians flourished in Mesopotamia, mainly in what are now the countries of Turkey, Syria, and Iraq. Around the 25th century BC, they started prospering as a kingdom and went on to build the Assyrian Empire. The Assyrians were famous for excellence in culture and military power. They had exceptional fighting skills and used modern military strategies, which allowed them to acquire massive areas and build one of the biggest empires in history. The desire to rule their empire. The Assyrians used horrifying and painful punishments to frighten people, victims of rebellions, and anybody who dared to question their rule. In the Assyrian Empire, punishment served two basic, unexplained purposes: to spread terror and keep subjects under control. Those who dared to displease them were dealt terrible punishments. The Assyrians were infamous for their cruel and stomach-churning punishment techniques. One of the horrifying practices in their chapter was flaying, a punishment in which the victim's flesh was peeled off, causing them horrific pain. Another technique was impalement, which involved piercing the victim's body with a sharp stake and leaving them to die a slow and horrific death. Dismemberment was even more brutal. The Assyrians would purposefully cut off limbs or other bodily parts, causing terrible suffering and humiliating victim. The purpose of these physically brutal penalties was to create fear in people and establish the empire's power. They also served as a public message. The Assyrians used these kinds of displays, which they knew would have a psychological effect, as a means of fostering fear and surrender in others and preventing any opposition to their authority. They wished the victims weren't born at that particular time. These terrible punishments shed light on the brutal strategies used by early civilizations to gain dominance and control. The main targets of the Assyrian punishments were different groups that were under the empire's control. First of all, these terrible penalties were carried out to rebels and those who dared to challenge the authority of the Assyrian Empire. The terrible consequences of being beheaded, impaled, or severed were inflicted upon anyone who dared to rebel against the empire's authority or commit acts of rebellion. These harsh penalties are also frequently imposed out to prisoners of war who are taken prisoner during warfare. Encouraging other regions and kingdoms to witness the public display of prisoner mutilation and suffering prevented them from resisting or opposing the empire's vast territories. These penalties also applied to the civilian populace that lived inside the empire's borders. The Assyrians used terror as a tool of control to put down any difference or rebellion within their people.